Hello and welcome back, episode 2 of Off the Wall with your host Matt Wall. Today we've got two questions, one from Facebook and one from a friend. I'm excited, let's get to them, alright? Off the Wall. Question number 1. What do we do as Christians when the Bible is silent on a topic or issue? What do we do when the Bible is silent on an issue? So first I'll say, when the Bible speaks, we as Christians should speak, because the Bible is clear enough for us to understand it. And when the Bible is silent, we Christians ought to be silent. What is written is sufficient for us. And I know we don't like to hear that. I don't like to hear that as someone who constantly is learning and gaining more knowledge. But we know that God has some things to say about silence, about the Bible being silent. And one of those in Deuteronomy 29, he says, the secret things belong to God, and the revealed things belong to us and to our children forever, that we may follow the words of this book. I think that's a really great scripture that reminds me that God reveals enough to us that we can understand Him, we can know Him, we can grow in our relationship with Him, but He doesn't reveal so much that we become arrogant and conceited, because only God can handle that much information, right? And we, as the creatures, don't get that kind of choice. We take what we get and we apply it to our lives, and we conform ourselves to what we get, and we leave the rest to God, because ultimately He is all-knowing and He is in control. All right, question number 2. This one is a current event. Is the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, a judgment from God? This issue is not a simple one, okay? But I'm going to answer the question as best I can. There are two sides to this, right? We know that not every bad thing that happens is automatically a result of God's judgment. That's just not the case. Because even in the New Testament, there are two examples Jesus gives. One in John 9, where the disciples think that a person was born blind because of his sin or because of his parents' sin. And then in Luke 13, Jesus talks about a tower that fell and killed 18 and says, are these sinners worse than you? And he says, no, they're not. So we know that not everything that happens is God's judgment. But what we do know is that God does use things like plagues and pandemics to draw people to Himself. And we know that God does use plagues and pandemics, like in Exodus, right? And with Pharaoh, where He does send a judgment on Pharaoh because he is not listening to God's command to let go of God's people, that He can use those things as a judgment. Either way, I think it's fair to say it's a wake-up call for us, that we as Christians would draw near to Him, and that those who aren't Christians, that are seeking out spiritual things, that they would know Him, and that we would proclaim Jesus as the way and the truth and the life for those, that they could come to know Him and have an eternal relationship with Him. So I think that if it's not a judgment, it's absolutely a wake-up call. And I hope that we are on the front of that, saying Jesus is our comfort in this time, and Jesus is the truth, and that we can trust Him because of what He did for us on the cross. Thank you guys for these questions. I'd love to get more questions from you guys, and I hope we can talk again soon. You guys be blessed.